howled through the dense pines of Black Hollow, a forgotten town nestled deep within the Appalachian Mountains. The kind of place where the sun seemed to shy away, casting long, twisted shadows that danced like specters on the forest floor. It was a town where secrets were buried deeper than the roots of the ancient trees, and where the past never truly died. But for Emily Carter, a young journalist seeking her big break, Black Hollow was just another story. She had come to investigate the mysterious disappearances that had plagued the town for decades. Little did she know, the shadows beneath Black Hollow were alive, and they were hungry. Emily's car sputtered to a stop at the edge of town, the engine coughing its last breath. She stepped out, her boots crunching on the gravel road, and looked around. Black Hollow was a ghost town in every sense of the word. The few buildings that remained were weathered and worn, their windows dark and lifeless. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. She made her way to the only place that showed any sign of life, a dilapidated inn at the end of the main street. The sign above the door read Black Hollow Inn, though the letters were so faded they were barely legible. Emily pushed the door open, the hinges creaking in protest. The interior was dimly lit, the air heavy with the smell of mildew and old wood. A man sat behind the counter, his face obscured by the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. He looked up as Emily approached, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "You lost?" he asked, his voice gravelly and low. "No," Emily replied, forcing a smile. "I'm here to write a story about the town. I'm a journalist." The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Emily thought he might tell her to leave. But then he nodded, reaching under the counter and pulling out a key. "Room 13, he said, sliding the key across the counter. "Don't go wandering at night." Emily took the key, her fingers brushing against the cold metal. She wanted to ask him what he meant, but he had already turned away, disappearing into the shadows at the back of the room. Room 13 was at the end of a long, narrow hallway. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, the patterns so old and worn that it was impossible to tell what it had once been. The room itself was small and sparsely furnished, with a single bed, a rickety chair, and a dresser with a cracked mirror. Emily set her bag down on the bed and pulled out her notebook. She had done her research before coming to Black Hollow, but there was still so much she didn't know. The disappearances had started over a century ago, with the first recorded case in 1893. A young girl had vanished without a trace, her body never found. Over the years, more people had disappeared, hikers, travelers, even locals. The authorities had never been able to explain it, and eventually, the town had been abandoned. Emily flipped through her notes, her mind racing. There had to be a connection, something that tied all these disappearances together. But what? As the hours passed, the temperature in the room dropped, and Emily found herself pulling the thin blanket tighter around her shoulders. She was about to give up and try to get some sleep when she heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper coming from the walls. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, until it was a cacophony of voices, all speaking at once. Emily clapped her hands over her ears, but the sound was inside her head, echoing through her skull. And then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Emily sat there, trembling, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She told herself it was just her imagination, that she was tired and stressed. But deep down, she knew better. The next morning, Emily decided to explore the town. She started at the old church, its steeple leaning precariously to one side. The doors were locked, but she managed to pry one open just enough to slip inside. The interior was dark, the air thick with dust. The pews were overturned, the altar cracked and broken. Emily's footsteps echoed as she made her way down the aisle, her flashlight casting long shadows on the walls. She was about to leave when she noticed something carved into the floor. A symbol, ancient and intricate. It looked like some kind of sigil, with strange twisting lines that seemed to move in the dim light. Emily knelt down, running her fingers over the carving. It was cold to the touch, and she felt a strange, almost electric sensation as her skin made contact. Suddenly, the ground beneath her began to tremble, and the whispers returned, louder than before. Emily stumbled back, her heart racing. The shadows around her seemed to come alive, twisting and writhing like living things. She turned and ran, the whispers following her all the way back to the inn. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. The whispers were constant now, a never-ending chorus of voices that seemed to be calling her name. She tried to block them out, but it was no use. They were inside her, a part of her. Desperate for answers, she went back to the church. The door was open this time, and she stepped inside, her flashlight casting a weak beam of light in the darkness. The symbol on the floor was glowing, a faint, eerie light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Emily approached it cautiously, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. As she got closer, she realized that the whispers were coming from the symbol itself. And then, without warning, the ground beneath her gave way, and she was falling, down into the darkness. Emily landed hard, the impact knocking the wind out of her. She lay there for a moment, dazed, before slowly getting to her feet. She was in some kind of underground chamber, the walls lined with ancient, crumbling stone. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the whispers were deafening. She turned, and her blood ran cold. The chamber was filled with bodies, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They were stacked like cordwood, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. And in the center of the room was a massive, pulsating mass of shadow, its form shifting and changing with every passing second. Emily realized with horror that the shadows were alive, and they had been feeding on the people of Black Hollow for centuries. The disappearances, the whispers, the symbol, it all made sense now, but it was too late. The shadows surged forward, enveloping her in their cold, suffocating embrace. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was the glowing symbol, now burning with an intense, blinding light. The man at the inn stood at the edge of the forest, watching as the shadows retreated back into the earth. He had seen it all before, countless times. The town of Black Hollow was a trap, a place where the unwary were lured to their doom. He turned and walked back to the inn, his footsteps silent on the gravel road. Room 13 was ready for the next guest, the key waiting on the counter. The shadows beneath Black Hollow were patient. They could wait.